for this one.
Oh, really? Cool.
So
Oh,
you
cool.
must have done this in the past.
Well, I've done them, not here, I haven't done it.
Okay.
So this is
Wow, is this a great group or what?
I don't have to.
Everybody has a Deirdre speaking.
I think it's
super
super
fun.
Yeah, will it work?
I don't know.
You don't
I'll
know.
have to get up here in a second, so.
Hey,
We've been talking
Hold
about
on.
speaking forever, and now you get to come.
are we talking, is it noon?
It is noon. You can almost start here.
Okay.
I'm not in your way,
Boy, is this a
right?
great group or what? Let's all say Happy New Year.
Happy
Is it going to be an awesome 2016?
Yes.
Yes.
We are so off to the races here at Office Centers and Virtual Office Centers that I just get like, I heart singing, singing. But welcome. I'm Lisa Olsonowski, obviously with Office Centers and Virtual Office Centers, where we have workspace solutions. Here we go. Innovative workspace solutions for small businesses. So many familiar faces. It's just so much fun to see all of you. And I am so excited, not only here at Park Office Center, but in our other 4 locations that you have an opportunity to listen to this amazing presentation. I'm just curious though, do you ever get tired of building your business one client at a time? Mm-hmm. Okay. If so, guess what? You are in the right place. Public speaking is the best way to bring in multiple clients at once. There's a catch though. In order to turn those talks into income, you must know how to put together presentations that are crazy good, crazy good, so that people get engaged, they get real value, and they are lining up to work with you. Our speaker, Deirdre Van Nest, a valued and very favorite dear client of ours.
You say that to all the clients.
We have lots of favorites here. Deirdre is known as the Make Money from Speaking mentor. She's a national speaker, a certified world-class speaking coach, and a co-author of the Amazon best-selling book, World Class Speaking in Action. Today, Deirdre will give you strategies from her Speak and Get Results blueprint, and you can use these results right away to create your own crazy good money-making talks. With that, let's have a warm welcome for Deirdre. Deirdre.
So is it safe to assume you've heard the old adage, work smarter, not harder? All right. What does that mean to you? Just call some things out. Time management. Yeah. What else? Being strategic.
Efficient.
Being efficient. Yes, all of these great things. And I've been thinking about how to work smarter, not harder, since I started my practice in 2008. And here's where I've landed. To me, working smarter, not harder means that I earn more, I work less, and I get to help a lot more people. How does that sound? Like a pipe dream? Like impossible? Kind of, exactly. And I used to think that too, but you know what? It's not. I'm doing it. I've helped my clients do it, and I know that you can do it too. But it wasn't always this way for me. So I want to share my story with you because I hope to give you, today you're going to get some real strategies you can use right away. Like if you were giving a presentation in the next hour, you're going to get 2 solid strategies that you can use in order to make your presentations crazy good. But I also want to give you a vision for what's possible when you use speaking as a marketing strategy. So I don't tell you this story to toot my own horn. I tell you because I really care about you and your business. And I'm on this mission to help as many entrepreneurs as possible earn a significant income, help a lot of people, but not have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of work to do it. So I want to take you back to the beginning of January of 2011, about this time. I was in my business as a business coach for about 4 years. Loved the work I was doing, loved my clients, but I was getting burned out. I was earning a mid-5-figure income, and I was having to work days, nights, and weekends in order to keep that going. And it just felt like there wasn't a big division between my home life and my family life. You know, I'd work during the day when the kids were at school. I'd come home after school. I'd be on the computer. At night, I'd be on the computer. And anytime my kids would be like, Mom, my response would be in a minute. And then that would turn into 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And I didn't feel like I was doing any of my roles well. Have you ever felt like that, where your roles are colliding? Yeah, it felt like that all the time. So finally, it was just too much. And I sat myself down, had a talk with myself, and I said, Deirdre, you're going to have to figure out another way to do this business, or you might have to pull the plug on the business. And that thought absolutely devastated me. So let's fast forward 5 years later to today. And thankfully, I didn't pull the plug on my business. Over the last 5 years, I built my business to the point of earning a healthy 6-figure income. And that's not just in gross revenue. I paid myself a 6-figure salary. I only have to work about 30 hours a week to do it. And I help way more people than I did previously. I have that family time now. I have time to donate to charity and volunteer organizations. And once in a while, I have a little time left over for myself. And in fact, I had this really profound moment. It was 15 months ago, October of 2014, one of those gorgeous fall days. I was down at 50th and France, and I was sipping on a Starbucks iced tea and lemonade. And I'm just kind of, strolling around the shops. And all of a sudden, I'm in front of this window, the store window. And I look around, and I'm like, this is weird. It's the middle of the day, and I'm looking in a store window. Right? So it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. So I start getting anxious, and I call my director of operations, Janine, and I say, should I be doing something? And she said, no, we're good. And that was a big moment for me, because it was the moment that I realized I had created that business I had been longing for all those years. I had finally created a business where I was earning a significant income. I wasn't working a ton of hours, and I was helping a lot of people. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today. So you might be wondering, how did that happen exactly? You're wondering what made that big shift?
No.
Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Help me out here. Yes. Work with me. All right, so here's what made the difference. It boils down to one single, it's a tough crowd, right? One single concept, leverage. So what I realized when I looked at that business pre-January 2011 is that all of the things I was doing to market myself required a lot of one-on-one time. I was doing a lot of one-on-one coffee meetings, which I think it's really fun to get to know people. I love getting to know people. I tend to be more of a one-on-one type of person than a group person, but as a main marketing strategy, it's a really inefficient and unsustainable way to grow your business. Now, why do you think that is? Time. It's really time consuming. So how long, all in, if you're meeting someone for coffee, how much time does that take, door to door, typically?
2 hours.
Yeah, an hour and a half to 2 hours, right? So that's a big chunk of your day. And so I thought, okay, Deirdre, you got to figure out a way to reach more people in 1 hour than you're currently reaching all month. And that was the challenge I gave to myself. And when I looked around and how to do that, what do you think the obvious answer was? Speaking, right? But I had a massive problem. I had already tried speaking when I started my business in 2008, and I was terrible. It didn't work for me. I got out there and I would speak. And raise your hand if you're using speaking right now, or if you've ever used speaking to market yourself. Okay, so tell me, has this ever happened to you? You go out and you give a great talk, and people come up to you and they're like, oh, that was so great. Great talk, I loved it. It changed my life. I learned so much. Thank you. And nothing? That ever happened to you? That happened to me over and over and over again. And the few people that were interested in working with me, I spent months chasing them down to come and meet with me. And so I was baffled by this. And eventually I thought, either I'm terrible at this or this is a lot of hype. And I stopped doing it. But in 2011, I was desperate. And I thought, let me take a closer look. Maybe I missed something. And it turns out I missed something really, really big. So if you've ever been frustrated by speaking, I want to tell you what it is that you might be missing too. Did you know that there's actually a science behind creating talks? They're what I now call crazy good money-making talks. You can't just give a talk, tack on an offer at the end, and think people are going to rush to want to work with you. There's this entire science of how you have to construct the talk. So when I heard that, I was actually thrilled because I thought, well, I can learn a science, right? You can learn a science. And so that's what I've spent the last 5 years of my life doing. I first jumped in just for me. I just wanted to learn it for me. And then what happened was I started sharing some of the nuggets and tidbits I was learning with my early coaching clients. And they were like, well, teach me more of this, teach me more of this. And then over time, as people started seeing the results I was getting, and I'll share a few specific things in a minute, and the results that they were getting, there became demand to create this entire program around this idea of creating these crazy good money-making talks. So in 2012, I created this system called the Speak and Get Results Blueprint, so that I didn't have to keep this to myself, so that I could teach other business owners like you a process for getting out there and using speaking as a bona fide, effective marketing strategy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We obviously can't get into the whole system here in the next 50 minutes. To give you some context, the Speak and Get Results Blueprint is a 6-month program that I take my clients through, okay? But I have chosen 2 key strategies to get you started. And here's the promise I'll make to you is that if you had a presentation at 1 o'clock today, you could easily use both of these strategies, and it would make a massive difference, not only in your connection with your audience, but your confidence, and that in turn will make a difference in your conversion rate. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we jump in, I do want to just give you a kind of compare and contrast. Again, I want to expand your mind to the vision. So I went from being someone who would speak, and I was getting paid to speak, so I wasn't a bad speaker, okay? But I didn't know the science. And so I would go out and give these talks and bring in no clients. Today, I will bring in, well, let me give you an example. November 10th, I gave a presentation, a 60-minute presentation, and within 4 months, we had generated over $90,000 worth of new client business. Or sorry, 4 weeks. $90,000, and it's still coming in. Now, do I do that kind of talk every day? No. Those happen probably once a year, but once a year, that's pretty good, once a year, right? Typically, it's anywhere between 1 and 20 clients every time I give a presentation. For a lot of my clients, it's even more because I'm a very specialized type of business, so actually fewer people are interested in this than some of my financial advisor clients, some of my chiropractic clients, some of the other coaches. I typically see clients who are doing nothing before. One of my clients, a financial advisor, is bringing in 80 to 90% of the audience every time she speaks, and they're meeting with her within a couple of weeks. So that's life-changing. So take a moment, jot down right now, what does one client bring in for you, say over the course of their lifetime or over the course of a year? Just jot down a number. If you're not sure, just kind of take an estimate. So if you gave presentations and you brought in anywhere from 1, let's even say 1 to 20 clients, raise your hand if that would make a big difference to your bottom line.
Sure.
Yeah. And what about your lifestyle, like the amount of time you might actually have in your day? Okay. So if I never see you again, my hope is your vision is expanded and you will actually start to really explore this for yourself. Okay. All right. Let's jump in with our roadmap for today. Okay. So here's what we're going to cover. First, you're going to learn the biggest sales killing mistake most presenters make when they open their talk and what not to do instead. Then you're going to learn one of the biggest sales killing mistakes most presenters make when they close their talk and what to do instead. And then finally, I'm not going to leave you hanging. If you want more of what you got today, you're going to get access to 2 free resources to get you started. All right. So raise your hand if you never want your audience to look like this. Okay, good. That's good. And you are not looking like that, so I am feeling very, very happy right now. That's obviously a really bored audience. And is it safe to say that a bored audience is not likely to line up to want to work with you? Is that pretty safe to say? Yeah. Okay. So would it surprise you to learn that most presenters start boring their audiences from the first words out of their mouth? Now, you might be thinking, well, how's that possible? Nothing's happened. Actually, a lot has happened. And here's why. Think about a book. Have you ever picked up a book and you read maybe a page or 2? And based on that, thought the book was going to be boring? What'd you do?
Down.
Put it down. You don't read it, right? So just like the first couple of pages are critical to making this sale to the reader, what's the sale the book is making? What's the sale the first few pages are making? Read me, right? Yeah, be interested. Read me. The sale is read me. The first 5 to 30 seconds are critical for making the sale to the listener that they should listen to you. People decide that quickly if they like you and if they're going to tune in. And here's the thing. If you can get people to tune in right away within those first 5 to 30 seconds, it's really easy to keep them, or easier, I should say, to keep them throughout the presentation. But if you lose people at the beginning, and think about yourself in a presentation, if the speaker has lost you right away, isn't it hard to tune back in? Mm-hmm. Right? It takes a lot of redirection to get yourself or for them to get you to tune back in. So don't make your job harder. So why do you think I'm saying this, that people start killing their sales from the first words out of their mouth? So let's pretend that Lisa, and you did a great job with the introduction, by the way. You did. So I liked your little twists that you had. You were awesome. So let's say Lisa just introduced me and I came up to the stage. What's a typical presenter going to open with? What are they going to say to the audience? Thank you. Hi, my name is. Thank you. Nice to be here. Good afternoon. Those are nice things. And in Minnesota, we like to be nice. But in speaking, those are called the unpleasant pleasantries. Okay? The unpleasant pleasantries. And they're unpleasant because nobody really cares. Of course you're glad to be here. You wouldn't have said yes. And if you weren't, you wouldn't have said it to the audience. You already know my name, Lisa just told you. Right? These are pieces of information that the audience doesn't need to hear. And what happens is you're wasting those 5 to 30 seconds. So I want to give you a little analogy here, because my hope is that when you leave here today, you will be 100% committed to never engage in the unpleasant pleasantries again. I'm going to take a poll in a minute, okay? So here's my analogy. Julie, let's say I was told that I just inherited oceanfront property, okay? Pacific coast of California, and Julie's my friend, and I say, Julie, guess what? I just inherited oceanfront property. It's right on the Pacific coast of California. And you know what I think I'm going to do there? What? I'm going to build a garbage dump. Oh, no. Yeah, oh no, right? Why are you saying oh no? That would be a crazy idea to build a garbage dump on Pacific coast property. Why? Why is that crazy?
It's far more valuable.
It's far more valuable than that. Thank you. Oceanfront property is a precious resource, is it not?
Yes.
It's a piece of prime real estate, correct? Okay, you have to start looking at every piece of your presentation as a piece or a parcel of real estate. The opening is prime real estate. So just like you would never build a garbage dump on Pacific coast property because it's prime real estate, don't build a garbage dump on your talk by opening with the unpleasant pleasantries. Are you committed? Do I have your commitment? If I tell you what to do instead, do I have your commitment that you'll never do it again? Raise your hand.
Never again.
Yes. Never again. All right, never again, never again, never again. Okay, great. All right, so do you want to know what to do instead? I don't want to leave you hanging. All right, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to open with a bang. Now, before you worry that you have to sing or dance or do something like super clever, it's not about that, okay? You don't. There's multiple ways to open with a bang, but I'm going to give you my tried and true, like foolproof, always works way to do it. And that is opening with a question. Okay? Open with a question. And the question should do 3 things. Which are listed there. It should be related to your content. Now, I know that's like, well, duh. But people actually do that. Have you heard those presentations? And you're like, what are we talking about here? I thought I came for this, and you're talking about that. Now, a caveat would be if there's some funny reason or something comes up, right, where something unrelated makes sense. But 99% of the time, make sure the question is somehow related to your content. Right? The second is you want to get your audience nodding your head yes in agreement to the question. Now, why is that? Why is it important for them to nod their heads yes? Engaged. And what did you say?
Invested. They're invested.
They're-
The investment is starting.
The investment is starting. Exactly. So studies show that the earlier an audience agrees with you, the easier it is for them to agree. You know, they'll get in the habit of agreeing with you, and that's what you want, obviously. Okay? And then finally, you want your question to be you focused. And when I say you, it means audience focused, not you speaker focused. Okay? So you want the question to be something that gets the audience thinking about themselves and has the word you in it. Because when you agree, when you're thinking about yourself, you're more engaged. I mean, it just is what it is. It's really hard. Try this. It's really hard to ignore someone asking you a question. Like start to notice that it's really hard to ignore someone if they're asking you a question. So as an example, I opened today and I asked you a question, right? I said, is it safe to assume that you've heard the old adage, work smarter, not harder? And everyone's like, yeah. And then I went into the rest of my presentation, right? And it was simple. It's not like, it doesn't have to be, like I said, that's not like a genius question, quite frankly. It doesn't have to be. So do you think you can do that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. See, you get it. Yeah. So what questions do you have about what I just said before we talk about the closing mistake? Because there's a couple of questions that you actually should ask me. If you don't, I will tell you what they are. But is anything coming up for you? Yes, what's your name?
Richard.
Richard, thank you.
So when you ask a question, yes, no question, if you want to nod,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a complex question to
Open-ended.
No, so it could be. You could totally do that.
Okay.
Can you
So
repeat the question?
let me say about complex. So open-ended, yes. You want to make sure, and I was even a little worried about my question today, has a few more words than I might typically like. So just be careful that the question isn't too long for people to follow. Does that make sense? So the more succinct the question is, the better. But certainly open-ended is fine. And you'll notice that I actually said, is it safe to assume that you've heard the old adage, work smarter, not harder? Yes. Okay. What does that mean to you? And then I did throw out an open-ended question. I like that because I like getting engagement from people right away and having them talk right away. So it could depend on the size. Like if you're speaking at a huge conference, you're probably not going to ask an open-ended question, right? You want to do something where, exactly. So it depends on the venue, depends on what you're trying to achieve, but that's totally fine. Great question. What else? Anything else?
Do you want to engage your audience with the first question? When you ask an open-ended question, do you want them to respond back to you?
Yeah, I think like I was saying to Rich, I think it just depends on, I think that's great, actually. But it also is going to depend on your venue. Depend on how much time you have, depend on your venue, depend on what you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with doing that. You can either do an open or a closed-ended.
Can you ask them, if it's open-ended, can you ask them just to write their answer down?
I would
Or
rather,
repeat their-
Can you repeat his?
oh, yes. So can you, if you're going to ask a question and you want like an answer open-ended, can you just ask them to write their question down?
No, their answer.
Their answer down. Sorry, their answer down. Yeah, and if I were to do that though, I would maybe prefer give them a second to jot it down and then have them call out their answers.
Okay.
I would prefer to get some sort of engagement going. Yeah.
What I do is tell the person next to you and have that person tell you.
Yep, you can absolutely do that too, where you do a pair share, where you ask the question, they jot it down, pair share, but then I would still have them share with the group. I like to, as early as possible, get you talking to me. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else coming up?
What is the size of the group that you do that with? Like 100 people? Like, it has to be a pretty small group.
So for me, I've done that anywhere up to 400 people. Yeah, I'm thinking if you were to do something though at like a big venue, convention center, that type of thing, where they're going to need mic runners to hear anybody, then you're probably not going to want to do that. Yeah, but you can do it with pretty large groups. You can definitely do it with pretty large groups. But really, the safest thing if you're not sure, just ask a yes/no question that you know they're going to say yes to. Yeah, that's the easiest kind of safe thing. Anything else coming up? Yeah, what's your name?
Deborah,
Deborah.
I tend to speak to very technical individuals.
Yes.
They don't want to participate.
Yep.
So what's your advice on what do you do? I would say open-ended questions are pretty much going to result in crickets.
Yep.
So what would you suggest?
So if you know that, I think that's great.
Can you
And
repeat her?
yeah, so Deborah was saying she speaks to technical people and they don't want to participate. So she knows that. So it is good. Know your audience, right? And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where it can get awkward, where you're standing there and nobody will talk. So there's been a couple of strategies mentioned here. The one is you could just do the yes, no, totally safe. You could just have them jot it down, right? You could do if you want to force them, I don't think I would do this open because you want people to like you at first. You kind of haven't earned the right to get them to do something, but you could have them share with their neighbor. But in your audience, I think I would stick with the yes, no question. Know that they might not nod their head, and that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
Another possibility is fist to five.
Oh no, what's fist to five? So here's a possibility. Fist to five. What's that?
Fist being something negative.
Yep.
I never.
Yep.
And five being I always.
Yep.
Give me a fist to five.
Oh,
It gives you a read on the audience of what, where they are on a topic.
Yep.
How many people have ever heard of.
Yep.
Fist to five.
Okay.
Fist
Yeah.
being I've never heard of it. Five being I could teach this.
Okay, cool. I like that. Great. Okay, so there's a question that you haven't asked me. Well, two actually. Unless I'll tell you what they are, unless anyone has something burning. Okay.
I have
Yes.
something burning.
Okay, Andrew.
So you say,
Your pizza.
to be an effective public speaker
Yeah.
like this, there's a certain leading Republican candidate who talks about himself incessantly from beginning to end, is never you focused, yet he gives thousands upon thousands. How do you explain
I
that?
don't know. I just don't know. I don't have the answer to that. That might be your presentation next month. That's yours next month. Here it is. You know what I think the answer might be? Celebrity factor.
He's in complete contrast to everybody else that's out there in
Yeah.
the field.
Yes.
He's the complete opposite
Yeah.
of what's going on, and a lot of people are unhappy
Yep.
about what's going on.
Yeah.
He won't be able to fulfill all of those.
Those discussion
Promises.
points. Yes. No, I think you're right. I think it's two things. He's a celebrity.
Yeah.
So celebrities have a lot of leeway. I mean, celebrities get paid a lot of money to speak, and a lot of them are terrible. It's true, right? So once you're a celebrity, you can kind of do what you want. None of these rules really apply. Right? So there's that. But I think to your point, and I'm sorry, what's your name? I see you all the time. I don't know your name. Don. Okay, thank you. It's nice to meet you. As to Don's point, he is controversial. And he's also hitting a pain point of saying things other people are thinking and won't say. So
I
So,
heard
yeah.
him recently called him Kardashian candidate. I thought was terribly fun.
all right, we're getting off track. Getting off track. Let me reel you back in. Let me reel you back in. So, okay. So, because I want to move on to this next point. So the question that you should ask me is two things. Deirdre, what if I have to introduce myself? Might you ever be in that situation?
Sure.
Raise your hand if you ever do a webinar or teleseminar or anything where you have to introduce yourself, okay? Or if there's no Lisa here, I was holding my own event and I introduced myself. So here's what you're gonna do. You are still gonna open with a bang, okay? And you can use this on video too. You should use this on video too, all right? You would still come up to the stage, right? Or on the phone, and you'd open with your opening question. So I would open with, is it safe to assume that you've heard the old adage, work smarter, not harder? Yes. Great. What does that mean to you? I'd get you calling it out, and then I'd say, here's what it means to me. Here's why I've landed. It's, working more or working less, working more, the whole, whatever I said, it's that, right? And then I'd say, but before I go on, you might want to know who I am. Or I should probably introduce myself to you. So what you do is you just look for a natural break in your opening bang. And a lot of times it might be just after the question. But a lot of times it also might be a few sentences in. Don't be afraid of that. Wait for a natural break and then say, but I'd like to introduce myself. You might not know who I am. Introduce yourself and then jump back into your content. Okay? The other question I get is, do you literally mean like the first words out of my mouth? Should be the opening bang, the very first word? Yes, I mean that. So notice when Lisa introduced me, we kind of like passed each other a little, and I think I looked at you and said thank you and to you. But then whenever I turn to the audience, it's like the curtain has gone up. So imagine that you're in a play and the curtain goes up. You don't thank the audience for coming to the play, right? So as soon as you face the audience, you're on and you open with a bang. The only exception would be if something weird happens. Like, and the example I give is if Lisa had tripped on the way back to her seat, I wouldn't ignore that and open with it. So, Lisa's laying there on the floor. So you have to be human, but I've only had something like that happen once in all my years of speaking. Not that exact example, but something where I needed to address it, okay? All right, does that make sense? Do you feel like you could do this an hour from now if you had a presentation? All right, awesome. So your assignment is, if you're already giving presentations, the assignment I'd like to give you is for you to come up with your opening question. Okay, come up with your opening question. And then test it on people. If you're not sure, test it on people. All right, so let's move on. So the first sales killing mistake is, really boring people from the first words out of your mouth. And the way to avoid that is to open with a bang. Let's move on to the closing mistake. Did you have something, Jennifer?
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yeah.
What do you think about polling kind of questions?
Yeah. So give an example, like
who's heard of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you get people raising their hands.
Yeah. I think that's fine. Can I give you an extra little bonus tip here if you're going to ask polling questions? Okay. What most speakers will do is they'll say stuff like, who's heard of, how many of you, that type of thing. Try not to do that when you speak to an audience. You don't want to put people in a collective group. You want to speak like you're talking to one person individually. So if you're going to ask any of those, how many of you, who's done this type of questions, you want to phrase it so that you could be passing one person in the hallway and that question would sound normal. So it would be, raise your hand if you've ever had pizza. Okay?
As opposed to, how many of you have had pizza?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or, okay, have you ever had pizza? Right? So practice, and that is an advanced speaking skill. And now that you know it, I hope that you practice it. That will take something that will take time for you to develop. And I always tell my clients, okay, if you can do this like 10% more each time you give your talk, over time, this is going to become a really natural skill for you. Yeah, Steve.
About adding a little humor in your question.
Add a little humor in your question. It depends on who it's going to be funny to. That's the problem with humor. I personally would not open a talk trying to be funny. If it ends up being funny, awesome. But I think that's super, super risky to open that, because everyone's opinion of funny is so different. Okay?
So you wouldn't open with a joke?
I would never open with a joke.
Never.
Would you? I mean, you're in the NSA with me.
I do.
Well, no, I'm just curious because my dad's been a lifelong speaker.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. Like, you open, you want to laugh right away. Like that kind of thing. So I was just curious.
Well, and maybe he's like, some people are gifted at that. I mean, for him, it might have totally worked.
Yeah.
If it worked and you can pull it off, do it. I know and for 99% of people out there, that's probably not going to be our sweet spot. But there's always going to be the exceptions. And hey, if it works, that's awesome.
What about opening just with a story in general?
Yes.
Illustrative.
Yes. So that's the other way. My two favorites are opening with a question or just jumping right into a story. Yeah. And the reason I teach the question here is it's much easier. Like, everybody can go and pick a question. But if I start talking about stories, if someone's never constructed or written a story, that's a little harder to know how to do. Yeah. Okay, one more and then we need to move on so I can get to the other mistake.
In terms of your opening with a bang,
Yep.
and let's say whether you're using a PowerPoint or passing out some kind of a mini workbook
Yep.
that they can take home, do you recommend right in the beginning up top of that, having that question there, having something referring to that
No.
opening there?
No.
Repeat.
Okay, so the question was, if you have a handout that you give out or a PowerPoint, do you recommend having the question on the PowerPoint or on the workbook? I mean, in most cases, no. I don't think it's going to add a lot, and it could take away, because it kind of pulls away the curiosity factor. If there's some reason why you think it would add to the presentation, try it. A lot of this is science, but there's a lot of art to it as well. So don't be afraid. I always tell my clients, listen, there's always another presentation. Don't be afraid to try stuff. But as a general rule of thumb, I don't think it's going to add a lot of value, and it might take away. Yeah, good question. Okay, so let's move into the closing mistake. Now, there's a lot of closing mistakes, unfortunately. And I chose to teach you this one because this is the foundational one. If you make this mistake and you do all the rest of it perfectly, you still run the risk of undoing what you did, lowering your conversion rate, and derailing the presentation. Any guesses as to what this, and if you've heard me speak or you're one of my clients, don't give it away. Okay? A couple of you back here, yeah? All right. Any thoughts on what it might be? What do you think one of the biggest things people do, and it's common, that you don't want to do?
Not ask for the sale.
Okay, not ask for the sale.
Summarize the whole content.
Summarize the whole content. That's what Jennifer's thinking. You know?
Yeah.
All right, you ready for the unveiling of this? Never, ever, ever, and I am emphatic about this answer. There's no art in this. This is all science, okay? Never, under any circumstance, end your talk with a Q&A session. Ever. Now, does that shock you? Raise your hand if that shocks you. Okay? Yeah, so a few people shocked. So why? Why is that surprising?
Because they'll leave. They won't come up and talk to you. They won't pursue an individual relationship with you.
No, if we do it, yes, we'll talk about that in a second, but why is it surprising? I want to know why it's surprising that that's one of the biggest closing mistakes and you should never do that.
Because most show program producers or coordinators want you to do it and then have a Q&A, and that's the gig.
That's the gig. That doesn't have to be the gig. I've been speaking since 2008. I've never ended with a Q&A, and I speak at regular venues, and I tell the organizers, oh, just so you know, I don't end with a Q&A. Oh, okay, no problem. Here's how I do it. Oh, fabulous. They don't care. They've just been told that that's what you want to include time for questions. Okay, I'm going to give you some suggestions on where to put your Q&A if you do it, right? Nancy's like, tell me where to do it. Yes, and there's a couple of key places you can and shouldn't. But to your point, why don't you want to end with Q&A? What happens in Q&A? Oh my, yes, doesn't the interest fade? The energy goes down. I was at a presentation, a fabulous parenting presentation a couple of months ago. Presentation was awesome, and they ended with Q&A, and like literally, it was like air out of a balloon. You could see it and feel it starting to dissipate, because all it takes is for one person, and there's always one, right, to ask some offbeat, very personal, extremely involved question for the rest of the audience to be like, I'm done.
Yes.
I have checked out. And then they're mad at you because you're talking to that person, right? Right? Okay. Don't do it. Raise your hand. Do I have you convinced on this one? Please. Even more than the open with the bang. I'm hoping I have you convinced on this because this can be a killer. Okay, great. Would you like some suggestions on where to put Q&A?
Yeah.
All right. So the first is you don't have to have Q&A. That's like not a rule. If the host doesn't require it, you can decide if you want to have Q&A or not. Now, I will share with you that one of my mentors, who's a superstar in the selling from the stage arena, will tell you when you're giving a talk where you're making some kind of offer, don't do Q&A because it actually lessens the tension in the room. People feel like they got what they needed, and your conversion rate's going to be lower. So when I first got out there and started giving talks, if I have a mentor, I listen to them. I mean, I follow, I paid you, I invested time, I'm going to listen to exactly what you say. And so I was doing a lot of talks, and I stopped doing Q&A. And you know what? I hated it. I was not having any fun anymore, because part of what gives me energy and part of the joy that I have is talking to you and helping you and answering your questions. And so after a while doing it that way, I was like, you know what? I don't care if my conversion rate goes down. If I'm not having fun doing this, there's no point in doing it. I personally have not noticed a decrease in conversion rate. Maybe there is, but I haven't seen it. I'm not worried about that. So I just want to tell you about that so you can decide for yourself. That's kind of up to you. Yeah.
You still wouldn't do it at the end.
No, I still wouldn't do it. I'm going to tell you the other two places that I would not do it at the end. Okay, here's where, if I'm going to do it, here's where I do it. You've noticed me doing it here. I do it after each point so that I can answer questions that are pertinent to that point, which for me, I like that. I feel like it organizes it for you. We kind of stay on track, right? I like that. So I do it after each point. So that's one option. The other option, I've done it this way too, and that works just fine, is after your last point. So you do summarize all your content. Let's say you have 3 points. You summarize the 3 points. Then you have the Q&A. Then if you're going to make an offer for your services, you make your offer, and then you go into your official closing. What you don't want to do, and here's the mistake people make if they don't do it at the end, is they put it after their offer. So why do you think you don't want to do that?
They're gonna ask about the offer.
Yeah, it's distracting. They might start asking about the offer, and what's going to happen is they're likely, we don't have long attention spans. They're likely to forget about your offer. So when you give a presentation, you're making some sort of offer, you want as little time as possible to go by from when you made the offer to when they actually get up out of their seat to do something. Okay? So Q&A would go after your last point, then you'd have your offer, then your close. Or if you're not making an offer, let's say you're doing a keynote and it's just not a place you're making an offer, you would do your 3 points, you would do your Q&A, and then your closing. Questions, comments, thoughts on that piece? Deborah.
Okay. I was at an event and I spoke, and I did not want to have Q&A, but the host decided that we were having one after I was done talking.
Oh.
And so it's a little unavoidable. And
yes,
I'll give you an example of why it's so awful. What I do is kind of ride the fence between the business side of the world and the technical side of the world.
Okay.
The question that was asked of me is, can anyone actually be good at riding the fence between business and technical?
Oh, see that, right? It's like.
What I said was yes, because I am.
Perfect. Good for you.
But still, I mean, those kind of questions can come up, that's what, and all of a sudden, everything you did, everybody's now focused on.
Is undone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Deborah was saying, what if you're in a situation like, what if today I was here and I finished, and then Lisa says, let's do Q&A. What do? You do it. You have to be gracious to your host.
I won't.
You won't. Thank you. She won't now. Thank you. No, you just do it. In that case, it is what it is, right? And do you want to talk about how to manage Q&A a little bit? Would that be helpful? Sure. Because there's some strategies to manage Q&A that would help if that scenario comes up, and also will help when you do Q&A. So the first thing to realize with Q&A is that you're taking a risk when you do Q&A. And your situation is a perfect example of the risk you're taking. You're actually giving the floor to the audience. So anytime you do that, you're taking a risk. Okay? I think it's a risk that's worthwhile. But you need to know a few things. So you need to either tell them how many questions you'll take or how much time you'll spend on questions, or at least be very aware of it yourself so that you know when to stop the questions so that you can move on. Okay, so you could say, we have time for 2 questions. So like today, I didn't say we have time for 2 questions, we have 5 minutes, because we actually have a decent amount of time. But if I had a third point to cover, I would have said after each point, we've got time for 2 questions. And I would have been really sticking to that. Otherwise, I don't know if you noticed, when we were moving on, I did say, Ron, okay, last question, and then we're moving on so we can get the next point in. And it wouldn't have mattered if 5 of you had your hand up over there, I still would have moved us along. But what I would have said if 5 people had their hand up was, I'll stay after, and you can come up to me after, and I'll be happy to answer your question, okay? So I think what's important to remember is you're the speaker, and once you take the stage, the audience is in your house. And you are this like benevolent, should I say dictator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
a good
you're
word.
a benevolent dictator. You're very kind and gracious, and yet you are running the show, okay? So don't let the audience run over you. Does that make sense? And be okay with, sorry, you know what, we need, in the interest of time, we need to move on. I want to make sure I give you all the great content I prepared for you. And if we keep taking questions, we're not going to get all of that. Okay? So that's some tips on managing the Q&A. Again, if someone asks a question, offbeat, off color, you can always refer to, hey, you know what, let's just talk about that offline. I want to make sure we kind of keep this in the interest of everybody. That's going to be good for everybody. Okay? Now, one thing that I learned, and I learned this by making a mistake, is that since you are now going to be doing your presentations differently than most of the population is used to this Q&A at the end, you have to tell your host that you do Q&A differently. So let's say they don't bring Q&A up. You still need to say to them, oh, by the way, just so you know, I do integrate Q&A into my presentation. I don't have a separate section at the end. And here's why. I was giving a presentation a few years ago at a really large venue. You were there. It was at Club E. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
Okay. And I didn't tell the host that I do Q&A like towards the end, but not at the end. And so he started getting like a little panicky when he saw it was 10 minutes prior to the ending and I was wrapping up the Q&A. He was kind of like, oh, no, there's still more time for questions, Deirdre. There's still more time. And I'm like, how does he know there's more time for questions? Like, he hasn't seen my presentation. And then it dawned on me, I never told him. I never told him that I don't do it at the end, so he thinks I'm done. So I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, Rick. I still have a closing story, and we still have more to do. So now I avoid that problem. Like, did I do that at one of your events, Teresa? Did I do that to you? Is that why you're chuckling?
No,
Okay.
She's like, but she's glad that you told her.
Okay.
Yes, glad that you told her.
And I might not have told you. I might have forgot. I don't always remember this either. Yes.
That's a hijack onto a very complex personal story that I want you to respond to. So we've been setting up book signing events.
Yeah.
And they tell you, okay, here's how we do it.
Right.
20 minutes, and because they're often for readings. Ours is not a fiction reading.
Right.
And then we do a Q&A.
Yes.
So it's the kind people are wandering in, and so are there any tips for structuring that kind of event?
Right, and I think that's probably a little bit different than a traditional talk and presentation, but it would be really great if there's a way that you could wrap up the Q&A with some sort of powerful reference back to the main message of the book. Do you think you could talk to your publisher about that, even though they do it this way? And so it might take a little education to get them to not do it this way. But if there's something that you could do, Nancy, are you thinking of something that maybe would work?
So we would do it like after the last point before the close.
Yeah.
So we'll do something, you do the Q&A, but then make sure we have a solid close that's powerful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If they'll allow you to do that,
Yeah.
then I mean, that's going to be better for them too. I think, yeah. So you can really apply this in a variety of situations. So let me look at the time. I have time for 2 more questions. What else?
Modeling what she's
Modeling, yes, this
Yeah.
entire thing is a model. Hopefully you're getting that. Yes, yes. What else? Is anything else coming up for you in terms of Q&A? Or now that we do have some time, we could talk back to the opening, if that's coming up. You guys are good? Yeah, Ron.
I want to go back to your quick reference to I'll be hanging out here for a while, and I'd be happy to talk with you, not only in a Q&A if somebody goes off, hey, I'll be here for an hour, come up and let's see if we can work through that.
Yeah.
Not only to help them personally and to look at doing it,
Yeah.
but to dodge that detour.
Yes.
The other piece is, where do you think the line is between being highly interactive and doing the Q&A versus deflecting a lot of that and saying, well, I'll be here for an hour until they kick us out. If anybody has any specific things, come and talk with me.
So Ron's asking, where's the line between being really, really interactive and then also sort of like shutting it down, right? And I'll be here and talk to you after. I think that's very individual for the audience, the topic, and your personality and what you want to achieve. So as an example, I'm doing more interaction here and more questions than I might do at many of my events because we're in I know a lot of you, first of all. It's a smaller event. We have the time versus if I'm doing a breakout session or a main stage at a conference, then it probably isn't going to be, it'll still be interactive, but not as interactive. So that doesn't really have a tried and true answer. And if anyone has an opinion or an idea, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always divided it that if it's a question of a personal nature or a question of the subject nature.
Yes.
If it's personal nature, the personal story that I would like you to comment on, it gets deferred or it goes to a break. If it's a question on what we've been talking about, then it can get an answer.
I think that's a great delineation, and I think, for Nancy and Richard, that was a question that I think everybody could benefit from. So, and even if I didn't, I would answer it quickly, and then let's get into more depth later. But same thing, if it's a question that everybody could benefit from, and a lot of people are going to have, then it does make sense to answer it. What's your name, sir? David. What's your comment?
Well, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that is being able to kind of pull out the universal part of the question and then defer their contact to the person.
Yes.
So if it's possible before they get too into the long story.
Yep.
That's great. The other thing, I think there's a real thing to learn, I think, from experiences like how to scale this.
Say more. So he's saying how to scale this. Say more.
Well, if you're talking in a smaller group,
Yep.
you can keep it more open-ended in that sense. It's much more elastic.
Right.
The larger group, as the group gets scaling up to more and more people, then it's got to be, more disciplined.
Absolutely. So the smaller the group, the easier it is to be a little more elastic. I like that word. As you get bigger and bigger groups, then you have to be more disciplined. Sort of like having one child versus 10, maybe. Imagine, it's kind of a similar thing. Yeah. Okay. So that's a great example. On that note, let me review where we've been, and then let's move on to the third item, which is the 2 free resources. So just to summarize what you've learned. So first, you've learned the biggest sales killing mistake that most presenters make when they open. What is that mistake? Unpleasant pleasantries. So what do you do instead? What are you going to do from now on? You open with a bang, or open with a question, a story, or you can open with a bang. Okay. And then the second Sales Killing a Mistake is one of the closing ones, and it's the biggest one. What is that? Q&A, and you're never going to end with Q&A again, and you're going to educate your hosts that you do things a little bit differently, right? Oh, and don't ask, would you mind? No, this is how I do it, right? This is how I do it, and it works just fine, okay? And so both of those things, can you see how you could use both of those things like 15 minutes from now? Okay, so both of those things you can use right away to be a much better speaker, and a much better speaker than a lot of people out there. The bar is really low. It really is, and that's the great news about speaking. The bar is low. So a few tips will carry you a very long way. I used to help set that low bar too, so I know what I talk about. Okay, so, but if you're in a place where you're like, you know what, I love this, and I want more of this, and you know it's a strategy you're going to be using, then you're going to want to dig in further into my Speak and Get Results system. So I promised you 2 free resources to get you started. Okay, so yeah, Mary, you're handing to these 3 tables in the back, and then I have this. And then we'll talk about what to do if you're on live stream at one of the centers. So you just take one and pass it down. Thank you. Okay. So, gotcha. Okay, everybody's good? You got one? Okay, so these are the steps. These 10 steps are the steps to creating and delivering a crazy good money-making talk. And then each of the steps has steps within the steps, okay? So today, we touched on step number 6 and a piece of step number 7. So there's all these other steps. And so if you want more information on those other steps, here are the great 2 options to start with. The first is to sign up for number 1. Okay, and number 1 is twofold. It's my speaking assessment. So remember how I told you I didn't know there was this science, and I would love to have learned this much earlier on. I've structured the assessment so the assessment lays out the majority of the skills you need to learn or know in order to write crazy good money making talks. So not only will you get to learn like, oh, I didn't know that was part of it, those skills, you can grade yourself and see where your skill set is right now and where you need help. And based on your score, you're going to get some tools from me. This is all that you know to help you get started. The other thing that you'll get with number 1 is you will get speaking tips from me. They used to be twice a month. Now I've just started doing video. So they might be once a week. We'll see how that goes. But you'll get a combination of video and written speaking tips from me. They're really short. If you like the 2 you got today, they're like that. And so I'm told that people like them, and short and sweet, and you can implement them right away. So if you want that, just check box number 1, and at the bottom, just put your name and email address, and make it very legible, please. Yeah. Okay, and then if you're on the live stream, you're not at this center, you can fill out this form. Your manager should be giving you a form or have given you a form. You can fill this out and then just hand it back to your manager, and then the managers will send them to Park Place here, Lisa, and she'll get it to me so that I get you what you need. And make it really simple. Okay. The second resource, this is not going to be for everybody. This might only be for a couple people here in the room. It's a Speak and Get Results strategy session. And this is going to either be with me or one of my coaches. It's a 45 to 60 minute phone conversation. And let me tell you what it's not, and then I'll tell you what it is and how you know if it's right for you. It's not a coaching session. So we're not going to be giving you tips like you got today. It's a session where we're going to really strategize, okay, where are you at in your business? Where are you at with speaking? What's going to be, does this make sense for you to do this? What does this look like? And then taking a look at your speaking assessment and seeing where the gaps are in your skill set. And based on that conversation, if we think that you're the right fit for the work that we do, then we will talk about what it looks like for me to teach you the Speak and Get Results blueprint so you can start creating and giving your own crazy good money making talks. And if we don't think you're the right fit, we will tell you that too. And if we have any suggestions for best next steps, we'll certainly let you know what that is. Okay. So there's a catch to this one because this does take a considerable amount of our time, right? So the catch is you have to qualify. And you see those little 5 boxes under number 2? As long as you can check all those boxes, you are the business owner, you make the decisions, you've been in your business for 2+ years, read down those 5 things. As long as you can check them off, that means you qualify. You're saying yes if you can check them. And all you have to do if you want one of these sessions is just put your name, email, and phone number at the bottom. And then you see where it says, yes, I will make every effort to show up, and a place for your signature. That is my plea from one busy business owner to another, that if you sign up for a session, you show up. Because if you don't, it takes time from someone else who could have used it. So I have 5 sessions set aside for this group, and my schedule is here. So if you want one of these, all you need to do at the end of the presentation is bring the sheet up over here. Mary's going to be helping me, and you can sign up for your session, okay? If you're on the live stream, we will email you. After Lisa sends me the information, I will email you and send you my online calendar. Okay, and then what will happen is if you sign up for a session, within 24 hours, you're going to get an email from Janine. She's my director of operations, giving you the instructions. You'll get the call-in number. There's a couple of questions we ask you. You'll get the link to the speaking assessment. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, great. Okay, I think I covered everything there. Okay, great. All right, so I want to leave you. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. If you only want number 1, then on your way out, just hand the form. Are you going to be at the door, Allison? Just hand the form to Allison. They don't have to worry about coming up here. Okay. All right. So before I close, I want to thank Lisa. I want to thank Allison. I know, and Corey. They've done a lot of work to put this together. So if we could give them a round of applause for putting on this together. I want to thank you in general for just, running a great place here. It's such a fun place to come. Just brings a lot of energy and a lot of great people. So thank you for what you do. All right. So you familiar with this book?
Yes.
Okay. You, my mother? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you're
Cry every
Does it make you cry? I know, it is a sad book. So if you're not familiar with this book, this is a book about a baby bird, and the bird hatches while his mother is out of the nest. And so he looks around, he's like, oh, I wonder where my mother is. And so he hops down, and he starts hopping around his little woods, trying to figure out where his mother is. And he goes up to everyone and everything. So like he goes up to a car, and he says, are you my mother? And to a dog, are you my mother? And then he goes up to a cow, are you my mother? And of course, none of these is his mother. And at the end of the day, the bird is really frustrated. He's exhausted. He's a little disappointed, maybe scared. Building your business one coffee meeting at a time can be a lot like this. Yeah. Right, you meet someone for breakfast and you're thinking, oh, are you my client? And then you go to lunch, are you my client? And then you have a call later in the day, are you my client? And at the end of days, weeks, months, years of this, you can end up exhausted and frustrated and scared and disappointed like the baby bird. But there is a better way. And it's using speaking as your marketing strategy. So if you want to build a business where you can earn a significant income, you can help way more people than you ever thought possible, and you don't want to have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of work to do it, then I really encourage you to make a commitment today that you're going to do what it takes to learn how to give crazy good money-making talks. Thank you.
Awesome. Yay! Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. That was fun.
Yep. So everybody knows the marching orders. We'll be handing the paperwork to Scott. We're signing up here with Mary. And I want everybody to know that we loving power lunches. We're doing them every month. Next month, we're going to have, My Phone Can Do What? It's a VoIP talk by Michael Banner with WizKids. He will be speaking on the power of VoIP soft phones, the benefits of voicemail to email, and Find Me, Follow Me, and the software as a service. So that's going to be February 25th, and that's at noon. Join us for that awesome session, and we have lots of awesome sessions to come. Also, next Thursday, Teresa, next Thursday, February 4th, how many women in the room like to drink wine and eat chocolate? Do we have an event for you? Only the women. Okay? We're going to be at International Plaza, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Already have 70 people signed up. 70? 70. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We'll be doubling that number and having a lot of fun. So sometime we might include the boys, but not this time. Okay.
We'll be around
So next Thursday. So we'll be raising the roof, having fun. Everybody have a great day. Thanks so much for being here. One more thing, Scott.
It's Thursday. Don't forget to mention
projects Fran's been talking that are coming along.
Utah.
Okay, just stand back here. So for those of you who know that we have a couple of pretty good sized projects underway, by the end of this week, our France Office Center expansion is gonna be done. And it looks fantastic. We're starting to fill up, so that's really exciting for us. But there's still some opportunity for each of you if you want to come take a look. Minnetonka Office Centers, drywall's all in today. It's right off 62 and 494. Outstanding location. We're a week ahead of schedule. We'll be ready on that by the end of March, beginning of April.
Yes.
So just a little bit of an update. Stay close to the website if you want to learn more. Some things that they
Let us know if you want to come tour.
And I will take Q&A now.
All
right, everybody.
You'll take what?
Q&A.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yay.